point where the teaching of today that I find most significant, you ought to text somebody, tweet somebody, tell them that, the good Dr. Manning has a message for them today in light of all the things that are going on with respect to the death of George Floyd. And I posted this up a couple of days ago, and I sent this tweet directly to Black Lives Matter. And that's what it says. To Black Lives Matter, period. If Malcolm, Mandela, and Martin were alive, you would call them hate preachers because they said LGBTQ is an abomination, found in Leviticus chapter 20, verse 13. To Black Lives Matter, all your marching is backwards, not forward, wretched, not righteous. You are marching into darkness, Black Lives Matter. And I didn't just stop there, but there's an article in the 1964 version of Ebony magazine where Dr. King said that homosexuality was a psychological disorder. And I wrote yet another tweet that I want to post up to all ears that will listen. And this tweet was this: absolutely nobody loves the Hamite, that's the black man, more than I. I am willing to die that he, the black man, Hamite, might live. He, the black man, raises most hell against an unjust system. But from Dr. King to Farrakhan to Obama to George Floyd, he still can't raise himself or his self-worth. And nothing has been said that's more true than that. He knows how to raise hell, but he doesn't know how to raise himself or his community. And yet one more, and I promise not to inflict myself upon you any further. And that is this. Jesus will not change the prophecy of the tribulation. And this tweet was sent out in light of everybody calling for change. Don't you remember that Obama was the change presidency? Change. 8 years of fecklessness, indecision, absolute nothing that Obama did. And were I Obama, I would probably commit suicide. Because after 8 years, to see the groundswell of a planetary call for change, saying to him, you did nothing. That's why George Floyd was lynched. You did nothing. We got to get out in the street and get the change. We gave you the highest office, the most powerful office on the planet, Obama, to change. And you did nothing. Now we're in the streets, one and all, black and white, Jew and Gentile, because you brought no change, Obama. And he needs to feel terribly embarrassed, and all of his supporters need to run like rats from a sinking ship. But I can tell you this: Jesus will not change the prophecy of the tribulation. If you haven't read it, it's in Matthew's Gospel, chapter 24, verse 1 and following. Satan cannot change his evil. Trump a degenerate now, Trump a degenerate forever. Wall Street will rob the poor. White racism don't ever change. White privilege is here to stay. House Negroes don't want change. Change ain't coming. All that talk at George Floyd's funeral, all that talk about change, all that Black Lives Matter talk about, change ain't coming. If Obama couldn't get it with the White House, if Obama couldn't bring change, y'all ain't gonna get it either. It ain't coming. And not only that, but Jesus ain't gonna change the prophecy of destruction. And you ain't gonna change the morality. Negroes don't want change. Eddie Glide don't want change. Cordell West don't want change. Al Sharpton don't want change. If y'all stop shooting black boys in the street, Al Sharpton will be out of business. MSNBC will fire him. But this Crump boy, he'll be out of job. They don't want no change. They want the status quo. In fact, Al Sharpton wants you to shoot more black folk. He can make more money, ride on more private jets. They don't want no change. You want Tyler Perry and Robert Smith and all them, they want to see more killings. They don't want you to stop shooting. Whatever y'all police do, Al Sharpton and Ben Crump and Cornel West and all the rest of them, Don Lemon and all of them, Van Jones, they don't want change. Don't y'all stop shooting. They lose their importance. They have no other contribution other than be ambulance chasers and getting paid big money every time y'all police somebody, shoot somebody black. They ain't looking for no, these house Negroes don't want no change. No, that's why Obama didn't bring it. He don't want no change either. So having said that, let me talk to you about a period when Negroes were most successful, and I'm going to be a little bit, professorial today in my process, because I want to take you back to the period of the Industrial Revolution, and I'm going to bring up a number of people. One in particular, a man that was born a slave, and another born right on the cusp of slavery, to talk about a time when Negroes were most successful, and they gave birth to Black Wall Street in Oklahoma and Rosewood in Florida. And then I want you to sit down peacefully and consider, do we have anything like that today, that we have digressed, that we have gone backwards from that period? But during the period of I want to talk to you about the period of Marcus Garvey and the universal Negro improvement movement across America, but particularly here in New York. And I'd like to talk to you also about Booker T. Washington and the Tuskegee Institute, also a major movement. And both of these men were extraordinary leaders during the period of the Negroes when Negroes were Negroes. They both lived in the period of the Industrial Revolution that got started in the late 19th century, and processed right in through the 20th century. But it was in the period of the late 19th century that Marcus Garvey and Booker T. Washington were born. Booker T. Washington was born a slave 10 years before slavery ended. And we'll get to that in a bit more detail in some of the other teachings that are going to come forward. But these were the best, most prosperous days that the Negro has ever had, or unless ATLAH comes and y'all wake up, will ever have. And let me just kind of set the stage for this, of the tremendous life and leadership of Booker T. Washington, who consulted with a large number of presidents, whether it was Calvin Coolidge or Woodrow Wilson or others, and a great philanthropist, and one who was for, in a large degree, segregation, who understood that process. His counterpart, of course, Marcus Garvey, would have been against segregation, or was for it. And I'll let me explain that a little bit differently, because the nuances here a little bit, they take a little time for you to understand both of their positions on segregation, but they were both major leaders. Ultimately, Marcus Garvey, who had been convicted by some spies that they had taken into his office and into his organization of the Universal Negro Improvement Movement, set him up, and he was convicted on mail fraud and sent to prison for a couple of years, later pardoned by Calvin Coolidge and sent back to Jamaica. And I want to remind all the members of the ATLAH Church, and especially all the school children and I elder the floor, I need you to start holding classes, as I did several years ago, in Marcus Garvey Park. We are, to all y'all listeners who've never been to New York and never been to our church, we are less than a stone's throw. We are 40 to 100 steps away from Marcus Garvey Park. In fact, if you travel east, I'm sitting on 123rd Street facing south with my north. What you see behind me is the back that's the north side of Lenox Avenue. Well, if you travel east to just the one block is Marcus Garvey Park. So I want to say to all the members of the ATLAH World Missionary Church to be encouraged, and to all the children in the elder floor, you got to start holding classes in Marcus Garvey Park. Because to be encouraged, to think for this just a second, Elder, that God has put us this close to Marcus Garvey, put us this close to his park, put us this close to his great parades on Lenox Avenue, put us this close to Father Divine, and then put us in Father Divine's building. That's no coincidence. That you got to see that God, the hand of God has been in this, Mother One, that God's hand has been in this for years. Mother Shekinah, God's hand has been in this for years. He's put us in Marcus Garvey Park, in Father Divine's building, in the heart, and then giving us the understanding. So today's teaching is going to be very important. I want to ask Esther Butler and Marsha Carpenter Hodges to please pay special attention and take special notes of that which we're going to teach today, when Negroes were most successful. And so we want to look at that. So let me set this up by saying this. Booker T. Washington was born a slave. I think he was born in 1856. Slavery ended in 1865. So he's 10 years. He's born a slave. I might want to know, without seeming proud, that my grandfather, Charlie Patterson, the first person I ever saw die in the world, it was baffling to me that my grandfather, Charlie Patterson, died. Grandpa Charlie, his wife was named Sarah. We called her Ma Sarah, and we called him Grandpa Charlie. Grandpa Charlie died, but before he died, I used to walk across the field. He had a big, he worked a big field, a big farm on the plantation there in North Carolina, between Lumberton, near Bowie and Philadelphia's and Red Springs and Pantherford. He was in that little enclave of little small towns. And he had a big piece of land that the white man had him work. And he had 17 children, Grandpa Charlie. And he was born a slave. And I used to hold his hand as a little boy. I used to walk across the field with him. He had big hands. At least I thought they were big because I was a young boy. I think I was 4 or 5 years old when he died. And they put his casket, years ago, they used to put the casket of the deceased in the living room of the house. It wasn't in the funeral home of the church. And his casket was and we used to go to bed, go to sleep. His casket, I go in there and look at that Grandpa Charlie, dead as a doorknob. Anyway, Booker T. Washington was born a slave. I thought I'd put that in because some of the young children might know that's how close I am to slavery. I'm a bit aged, so anyway, Booker T. Washington was born a slave, but raised himself up. And he became a great educator, an orator, and a developer of a political system. But he was born, Booker T. Washington's rise to power was a rise to power. Now, Sabbath, pay very careful attention to this. Booker T. Washington's rise to prominence and power in establishing Tuskegee Institute, and George Washington Carver, one of his great professors. Booker T. Washington rose to power during the time of the great Industrial Revolution. From the late 19th century, we're talking 1885 up until 1920, was the great Industrial Revolution, where wealth in America was going off the charts. Yet the Vanderbilts made their money during the great Industrial Revolution. The Carnegies made their money. The Mellons made their money. Henry Ford and the Ford Assembly Line, Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan, all of these very prominent and very powerful old money names that we now see still in America, still riding the crest of money, got their start in the period of the great Industrial Revolution. Now, Theodore Roosevelt, who was the president at the very turn of the 19th century, of the 20th century rather, 19th and the 20th century, was later labeled as one who was a trust buster, because during those periods of time, these Rockefeller oil, you couldn't buy any oil to put oil in a lamp or a car or anything else unless you paid Rockefeller some money. So later the conglomerate of all the oil, and then of course the way that was shipped by the Vanderbilts on the rail stations, transported from California to New York, was all through the Rockefeller auspices of the Vanderbilts. And so they had a thing going on where nobody else could get into the market, like pretty much what Bill Gates did with the Microsoft software. But Theodore Roosevelt busted up what is known as, he was called a trust buster. He broke up all these mega organizations. So Rockefeller Oil then became Standard Oil. That's just a little bit of history. But in the same time, while all this wealth was being generated on the Japheth side, people like Marcus Garvey and Booker T. Washington was generating wealth and power on the Hamite side. It was, I would give my, I don't know if I give up my seat and my time with Elizabeth, but I would want to go back to that period and watch these two men compete with Rockefeller, compete with Vanderbilt, compete with Carnegie and the Mellons, compete with Henry Ford, and watch them build a development that is an enclave that is separated from the Japheth, but strictly for blacks. Marcus Garvey's movement was called the Universal Negro Improvement Movement. The UNIA is what it was called, that he founded. And it became a very powerful organization at the turn of the 19th and the 20th century. And Marcus Garvey became an extraordinary person in Harlem. Most of the businesses, and he gave birth to the great Harlem Renaissance, where Harlem really came alive, and people came moving up here from down in around Hell's Kitchen. And of course, there was a large enclave of blacks that lived in the Central Park region. Before Central Park was fully developed as Central Park, they got pushed out of the park and moved also up to Harlem. But it was also in that period that Rosewood was inspired to become a major enclave of black entrepreneurship, where blacks own their banks, their businesses, they changed their money. In Rosewood, in the deep south of Florida, in Ponce de Leon, the same period of Sabbath during the Marcus Garvey, Booker T. Washington, also was built Black Wall Street. At the turn of the century, Black Wall Street was destroyed in the 1920s. But they had been building that society for 30 years. So Black Wall Street doesn't get a lot of publicity, neither does Rosewood, mainly because it is a threat and it might correspond to ATLAH. When that man, Dr. Hartfield, when that man looked in my eyes down there 2 years ago at the New York City Museum History Fair and knew I was from ATLAH and I was promoting Rosewood, I didn't go to Black Wall Street. I figured that would be too much for them. And he looked in my eyes, and I could see him saying, "We can't let this win, because this may go national. If you win here locally, you go to the state may give it national, you go to national, and Negroes everywhere will see that the child of Rosewood, the child that will be birthed from Wall Street, is now alive in ATLAH." And they did not want that to happen, Dr. Hartfield. They did not want that to happen. But in the process, Rosewood and Dr. Leah and Black Wall Street in Oklahoma were all products of the great industrial revolution. But out of that emerged some enormous, larger than life Negro Hamite men. One was Marcus Garvey and the other was Booker T. Washington. I should have worn my Booker T. Washington shield today. And they became very prominent. Now, there was a spoiler in the midst of this, a pinch-nosed Negro named W.E.B. Du Bois. I'm not going to talk about him right now. But these three men were the most prominent of the Negro men in that area of the great industrial revolution. And when you understand, here, Booker T. Washington, if I can just kind of look at him for just a moment, of course, was born a slave. And Marcus Garvey was born in Jamaica. And the sad thing, and Elder Paul McFarquhar and Elder Emerald, you Jamaican boys, the sad thing about it is that Marcus Garvey had been so scarcely ill-treated by the very people he fed and made millionaires here in Harlem, owning their own cleaners, their own restaurants, their own bars, Wilt Small's Paradise, all these institutions that was so much a part of the Harlem Renaissance got their start with banking principles and money that Marcus Garvey showed them how to, and then they turned on him like a bunch of fierce dogs. And one of the persons within him reported to the FBI, to the federal, not the Revenue Service, that he had sold some stock. He was trying to buy the ships to take Negroes back to Africa on a shipping corporation called the Black Star Line. Now, you need to know also the term black is beautiful didn't come from the 1960s. It didn't come from Stokely Carmichael. It didn't come from Fannie Lou Hamer. It didn't come from Dr. King. The term black is beautiful was coined by Marcus Garvey, but he became very powerful. Marcus Garvey not only owned all the businesses you see up and down Lenox Avenue, every store, all the businesses you saw up and down 125th Street, 7th Avenue, 131st Street, 136th Street were owned by Negroes. And the money that Marcus Garvey was bringing in, not to his organization, but teaching people how to bring in money. The money that he was bringing in was a threat to the well-being of the social. I mean, he was rivaling Carnegie and the Mellons and J.P. Morgan. Marcus Garvey was a bad man, a jammer in terms of economic development. The same principle when men were leaders in their homes, they didn't run off and create a welfare state for their children to be raised by the welfare system. They did not run off and leave their wives. They did not leave their properties without their own property. The same thing. I mean, you with Marcus Garvey would think when he hears James David Manning that he says, well, I must be a son of Marcus Garvey. I must be his boy. And then when we look at the ATLAH High School, the Great Tomorrow's Elementary School, Booker T. Washington will look over and say, that must be my son. Maybe I had a son, he's my grandson, and I don't know it. Because it's the exact same principle, not turning to the right, to the left, that both Marcus Garvey and Booker T. Washington taught. It's taught right here now in this cathedral, the ATLAH World Missionary Church, right here, a block away from Marcus Garvey Park. It is absolutely, it's a blessing from God to be a part of this cathedral, to be a part of what is happening here, and to see the history of what happened. Now, Marcus Garvey was later sold out by somebody in his organization. That's how I have to watch very carefully everybody in this organization, because the Japheth boy roll up on me and try to get, and I don't mean to keep harping on this and harping on this and harping on this, but, we asked the members of our congregation to try to betray me. They thought they were honoring Obama. They thought that they were doing Obama a service by getting rid of me. I'm still here, and Obama's nowhere. I think the biggest insult to any man I've seen in the century was the insult of Black Lives Matter marching in the street, and literally tens of thousands of people in every city, every major city and bodunk in America marching saying we need change because Obama didn't deliver it. If I were Obama, I'd go commit suicide. Because they're saying we need change. Obama had 8 years in the power of the presidency and didn't deliver it. We're going to get it ourselves. We're out in the street looking for it because we couldn't get it from the black man. Obama, so-called black man. In the White House, where I am, I'd commit suicide. Because nothing is more resonant to the fact of a failure that he was. But Marcus Garvey had some people in his organization who sold him out. And they said, I don't know how true it is, they said that Marcus Garvey was selling stock because he's buying up all these major ships. There's the White Star Line that the Titanic belonged to and several other major fun cruise ships from England to America. There was the White Star Line. Marcus Garvey set up what was known as the Black Star Line and then coined the phrase black is beautiful. This is what we're talking about the 1912, 1914, 1915. But in order to raise money, he didn't have the Joseph Zaffnap Pioneer Storehouse Fund. He raised money. He sold stock in the Black Star Line. People buy stock, but the man was a scholar. I don't think he had a high school education, Marcus Garvey. He was a scholar. Unlike people like Jay-Z and all these other people running around here making money, cussing out black women, this man was a businessman. Just like the Mellons and the Vanderbilts and the Carnegie set up their institutions and the railroads and bought up the Park Avenues and bought up the hotels and bought up the oil wells. Hell, Marcus Garvey was out there buying up ships to sell black folk back to Africa en masse. There was a couple of things going on. And so as a result of that, So now let me remind you now, we're looking at what's happening with the death of George Floyd. We're looking at all these misguided people. We're looking at Black Lives Matter. We're looking at people who are going backwards. And by the way, someone says that to go back to that period of time when Negroes were most successful will be to go back. No, it will be returning to justice. It will be returning to truth. It will be returning to prosperity. We need to get rid of these yo-yos like T.D. Jakes. We need to get rid of Al Sharpton needs to go. Ben Crump needs to go. Obama, they are despots. They are people that have destroyed. Don't you see? All you got to do is study your history of the power of the Booker T. Washington. I'll even let you study W.E.B. Du Bois. And you would look, ain't no way you would ever attend a meeting. Ain't no way you would let Al Sharpton preach the funeral for a jackass. Ain't no way you let that slick-haired, lying CI7 snitch call Al Sharpton anywhere near a church altar. If you knew your history as a black man. Ain't no way. There ain't no way you let him, or Obama, or Ben Crump, or Van Jones, or Eddie Glide, or Cornel West, or any of them, they're all sellouts. I mean, the house Negroes of the Gone with the Wind of Uncle Tom's Cabin would spit on Al Sharpton. Y'all ain't no show enough house Negroes. At least the house Negro used to get some pass some meat out the window to the field Negro. Y'all keep it all for yourself. Oh, it's just sick. And they won't let me out. So the reason I started out there apologizing to the Urban Dictionary, because they want to do everything they possibly can to stop this truth. I'm telling you a truth that will rival Henry Ford, John D. Rockefeller, the Mellons, the Carnegies, the Marcus Garvey, and that Booker T. Washington. I'm preaching that same truth right now. And your parents and your children and your family and your friends talking about I ain't a black man. I mean, have you ever seen anything as crazy as these people? Have you ever seen anything as sick as they are? Black Wall Street, right? Wasn't a fluke. Listen, the great industrial revolution, plus most of these folk, even these folk like these, and now I see more and more they're bringing up these Harvard professors with black faces and now try to pontificate about what ought to happen, how to stop police brutality, how to find equality after they didn't get it with a black president. They got 40 black mayors of every black city, of every major city from Atlanta to San Francisco to Dallas to Houston to Washington to Baltimore to Chicago, and they still are bellyaching and complaining and bitching and moaning about we need equality. When they got all these black mayors, got a black president, got black police chief, and they're still bitching and moaning, and their children are doing worse. The neighborhoods are more crime riddled now, and more food stamp laced, and more poverty and rat and roaches now in every one of these cities where you got a black man got more rats and roaches now than it did when it had a white man. Hell, you'd be better off with George Wallace than you would be with Keisha Lance Bottoms. I mean, it is ridiculous. I wonder how I keep my sanity looking at these fools. And so here, I apologize to Urban Dictionary. Why? I apologize because they let my word get out. They actually put it out. They might try to take it out. Might try to censor me, but they let my word get out. Because this is what needed to get out. And I don't think that I talk to a lot of people all the time. I don't think people know anything about the great industrial revolution. And, Booker T. Washington and my grandpa Charlie were born in the same period. They were born in the same breath, my grandpa Charlie. I walked with Grandpa Charlie. You know what Booker T. Washington made him credible down in Alabama in Tuskegee Institute that he set up? His principle was this. All right, I'm going to teach you science and chemistry and math and English. We're going to teach you all of those skills. And during those years, Barefoot black children wanted to learn. They didn't come to school talking about no basketball. They didn't come to school talking about the latest rap artist. They didn't come to school talking about Beyonce. They wanted to learn. Everybody wanted, all black, when I was in school, all black children wanted to sit in the front of the class. We wanted to learn. We wanted to learn. All of us, we wanted to learn. Never anybody slept in the class. Never in the school I went to. We wanted to learn. But he said also you need to know a trade. And so he would take them out. He would take them out to the fields, teach them how to plant potatoes, how to harvest crops, how to understand the process. And then God blessed him with a genius called George Washington Carver, who did more with a peanut than anybody could ever think. He was a great scientist, a great botanist. George Washington Carver was a student of Booker T. Washington, right? Everybody wanted to learn. Everybody wanted to, and that's how it was. I grew up under that tradition. I don't know this tradition. We have a captain in our church, El Capitan Farr. His boy is a genius. His son, his name is Jeremiah. I call him philosophical from time to time. And he's multi-talented. He's brilliant with the sciences, but he's also brilliant with music. And music is very appealing to him. So he came to me the other day, and he said he wanted to change his major to music, right? I mean, you're doing it good. There is music. I said, okay. I thought he had talked to his father about it, and his mama. And he just coming to me to tell me, but I found out he hadn't talked to his father and his mother about it. But, but his father said, no, you can get a trade. You're going to learn, you can do all the music you want, but you're going to learn, because he first started out, he got enrolled in college because he wanted to become a medical professional, encephalopathy, if you will, specialist. So his father came to me the other day and said, what's up? I said, well, what's up? What's up about what? He said, Jeremiah told me he wants to be a musician. He said, no. I said, no, that boy need to learn a trade and he can play all the music he wants. And that was a principle of Booker T. Washington. The Booker T. Washington that you would spend, 3.5 months to 4 months in the classroom and 3.5 months to 4 months in the field. You actually, you got a grade on how to pick cotton. You got a grade on how to make a potato hill with straw and dirt, how to preserve sweet potatoes for 2 years without them doing what we call cold herd. You got a grade for that. You got a grade for learning how to plant tobacco peanuts. You got a grade for that, as well as you got a grade for chemistry. I mean, you had Booker T, and it was an ingenious institute, Tuskegee. My aunt, Nancy Ann Jordan, graduated with a master's degree from Tuskegee. But they went down there and they started what they're doing now here in New York City with Columbia University. They went down there and Tuskegee Institute, after Booker T. Washington had died and some of his leaders weren't as committed to the cause as he, and they paid those professors down there and the principal down there to let them do some experiment on black men with syphilis and gonorrhea and some other diseases. And that's what Tuskegee is known for now. But the reputation has been marred. But it was a great school. And we modeled ATLAH, Great Tomorrow's Elementary School and ATLAH High School after the Tuskegee Principal and Institute. And by the way, Elder LaFleur, I'm going to have a graduation, but I have to tell you that we got to look carefully now because we are affording the parents who don't belong to our church, we're doing a great service to their children, and I don't know if they fully recognize it. So Booker T. Washington, Marcus Garvey, these were two great giants. And by the way, they were not small people. Both of them, Booker T. Washington was in the White House quite often. And he was advisor to a lot of presidents. And Booker T. Washington said at the time, let discrimination, let the white folk continue to discriminate. Let's not be so quick to want to integrate. You didn't find Negroes wanting to integrate until this pinch-nosed Negro named W.E. Du Bois comes along. He graduates from Harvard, right? He's got a Harvard degree, like Obama, the same damn fools. He got a degree from Harvard. They gave W.E. Du Bois a PhD from Harvard. They gave Obama a law degree from Harvard, right? Same thing. It's the same setup. This pinch-nosed Negro, W.E. Du Bois, comes back and he starts talking about integration, right? Now, W.E. Du Bois is the founder of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. So here we got two tracks now. We got the Universal Negro Improvement Corporation, where Harlem was awash with black money. Black Wall Street in Oklahoma was awash with black political power. People living good lives. Rosewood, Florida was awash. Here comes the Japheth man takes this pinch-nosed Negro, W.E.B. Du Bois, sends him to Harvard, gives him a PhD, and he comes back and he talks down Marcus Garvey like he's a dog. He talks down Booker T. Washington like they're dogs. That they allow white man to run roughshod on. They accept segregation. They accept discrimination. And then Booker T. Washington was friends with a lot of white folks. Booker T. Washington made train trips to New York, to Massachusetts, and came and spoke at fundraising dinners, and people raised money, and said he gave that money, took a bag of money back down there to Tuskegee to help pay the tuition for those barefoot school children down there in Tuskegee Institute. And here comes Obama. Here comes Al Sharpton. Here comes the NAACP. Here it comes. Now, I'm going to wrap this up right now, but I have to tell you as well that Booker T. Washington, Booker T. Washington, really, they're both Booker T. Washington and the Marcus Garvey had the principle of self-reliance, racial pride. Be proud that you're black. Remember, it was Marcus Garvey that coined the phrase "black is beautiful," not Fannie Lou Hamer. And they racial pride and self-reliance, economic independence. I mean, we're talking back in we're talking about in 1899 and 1901 and 1902, talking about economic independence from the white man. And it was successful. Black Wall Street is a mega success. And also what happened here in Harlem, in the Harlem Renaissance, oh man, let me tell you something. Marcus Garvey was the joint. It was. Every business in Harlem. And it was later Elijah Poole who watched Marcus Garvey and his success. The thing that Elijah Poole did that was different from what Marcus Garvey did was Elijah Poole extracted Christianity, which Marcus Garvey was not a big fan of, but Booker T. Washington was, and injected Islam. Now, there was not a lot known about the Islamic religion. I think, really, I mean, we can talk about 9/11, we can talk about, Al-Qaeda and, some of these other religions, and talk about the various Muslims now. But really, most white people in America didn't know anything about Islam. Somehow or another, Elijah Poole, who was a Baptist preacher, his father was a Baptist preacher down in Georgia, found out about Islam and the teaching of Muhammad and adopted it as a prayer. He meshed the Islamic principle, Islamic religion with the teachings of Booker T. Washington and self-reliance and Marcus Garvey, individual development, and started what was known as the Nation of Islam. And it was uniquely successful. So all these three, now, so Marcus Garvey is really and Booker T. Washington, they're really the father of Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm X. All that. But so when you look at where we are now, look at what the hell is going on. Look at I watched Al Sharpton yesterday at that funeral, and I watched all them Negroes up in that church acting like stock raising fools. And I watched that Joe Biden up there kissing butt like you ain't never seen kiss black people's butt before, what Joe Biden was doing. Somebody ought to, anyway. I mean, it is, and then, they put that boy George Floyd in a white horse-drawn carriage the way they did Dr. King. What the hell? Where I'm Martin King Jr. or Bernice King, I'd be, well, what the hell is this? Putting George Floyd in a white casket with a white horse and drove him 2 miles to the, what the hell what they doing with George Floyd? Burn the damn, I'm so glad. Listen, this funeral is over with. Now he got his brother testifying before Congress. Testifying to what? Testifying to what? y'all doing in a white casket? In a white horse-drawn casket? What? This is where these Negroes are now. They are Negroes. They're African Americans, and that's their problem. So maybe I'm cursed with a time when Negroes were successful. Cursed with the great days of Marcus Garvey. The great marches Marcus Garvey had on right here on Lenox Avenue. All the businesses. And when you look at, you go there and talk to these people. Now, you talk to them. You talk to them. You listen to them. And you say, well, you know, we did have a black president. And Pastor Manning, he ain't really for the black man. You know, but wait a minute. Some of y'all who fell in love with Obama. And still, when you look at me, you don't understand where, first of all, you were poorly educated. I don't know what schools y'all went to up here in New York or where the hell y'all went to school, but you've been poorly educated. You don't know education. You don't know nothing. Even y'all that went to Harvard don't have an education. You don't have an education. Booker T. Washington said you didn't learn from hard knocks, the field. You had to learn in the house and in the field. I know it all. And so you look at where we are today. Al Sharpton. Some preacher stood up yesterday and said Al Sharpton is something on the order, one of the greatest civil rights leaders ever. So what the hell about Dr. King? And Al Sharpton sitting there with his, is Al Sharpton wearing a weave now? I don't want to be petty. Yeah, I don't want to be petty. But it looked like he got a weave in his hair. Is he got a weave? Who's Al Sharpton's beautician? Because you know he got to have a beautician travel with him everywhere he goes. Oh, yeah. I think that boy got a weave now. Look at his hair. I think he's wearing a weave. Look at him. So, you know, many of y'all need to repent. And y'all pray for me. Well, I ain't praying because I'm scared or something. But at the ignorance that I have to face every day. I told Dr. Hartfield, we have got to raise up in the context. And by the way, you ought to just study the great Industrial Revolution. I found it to be an extraordinary time for white folk, the Industrial Revolution. You know, the thing that made Henry Ford so powerful was that he figured out how to make automobiles on the assembly line. And the assembly line, more than the automobile itself, became the issue. And Ford stopped popping out T-model Fords and A-model Fords just like that. Dodge and Chrysler, the fellow who started the Dodge and Chrysler organization that looked over what Ford was doing, and General Motors. I mean, the automobile industry owes this assembly line production out to Henry Ford. So there was a time when Negroes were very successful, and I come from that era. I've been here 40 years. Bob Jackson down in Tennessee, trying to teach these Negroes. They're not Negroes anymore. I would to God they'd become Negroes. But those of you who thought you've misunderstood me, who don't like what I've said, you think that somehow or another I don't like the black man, that somehow or another I'm this or that or the other. Somehow or another I'm not even a Christian. But just because you're ignorant and you don't know. You're suffering from a lack of knowledge, and the knowledge that has made you crazy. It has made men less than men. It's made you less than a provider. You're not strong. And when you see a strong man like me, you want to take him down. You want to destroy him. You haven't been raised in a tradition of independence and wealth and power. Being able, no matter what color your skin is, no man can trample on you. You say, well, Pastor Man, what about Black Wall Street? They went down there and went ahead and did what they did to them down there in Wall Street. We got something for that too. That was a tragedy. No, it was. And Rosewood as well. But I'm the son of Black Wall Street. I'm the son of Marcus Garvey. And I can tell y'all this, Ruth Brown. It's no coincidence that this church is on the corner of Marcus Garvey. It ain't no coincidence. It ain't just happened. It just happened. No, God has got a plan. And anybody connects themselves with this church, including the Japheth brother, anybody that connects himself with this church, you're going to be blessed. Unless you're crazy and you raise your hand against, then God will make you suffer in the lake of fire. He'll put you in a special suffering room. Raise your hand against this house. No, it ain't no coincidence that we're here in Father Divine's building. It ain't no coincidence. No, sir, Bob. No, sir. This is a bit of a news blog we do, looking at spiritual wickedness in high places for the most part, making some observations about it and giving people a biblical foundation to the way of interpreting, rather than have Sean Hannity or Laura Ingraham or Janine Pirro or Anderson Cooper or Rachel Maddow or Don Lemon, Rush Limbaugh interpret what's going on in the world. You come to me and I'll tell you based on what the Word of God says. They'll just give you their worldly, sinful view. But the Manning Report will tell you what God has said, whether to say yea or nay, whether to go or to stay. You'll be led by the word of Almighty God. Come to the Manning Report on a daily basis to interpret the spiritual wickedness in high places, because there's plenty of it that's going on. And so I'm the Lord's servant, James David Righteous Rebel Manning, and I'm here to serve you with news and information.